Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and today we're going to be doing a particularly interesting match? Yes, that one. In that it employs the RP army construction rules that I enumerated in far too many videos earlier this week. It is going to be, every single one of these armies is going to be a 60-30-10 split. So 60% of your armies, 12 units in total, are mid and or low tier. And then the next 6 are high tier picks, and then your final 2 are your bodyguard picks. So this is a match in which money appears to be no object. So everyone is going to be rocking full 20 stacks, and it's kind of beautiful. And the way that this battle plays out has given me a lot of ideas about maybe where to take multiplayer in the future, and try to maybe get more battles like this going. But in any case, there's not going to be like the highlight reel and the stuff that we've been doing usually on the channel today, just because I don't have as much time right now. And those sorts of games do, or those sorts of videos do take probably a good 8 to 10 hours to edit from start to finish. So yeah, we're just going to do it straightforward, normally. That's unfortunately all I have the time for today, but I think this battle is good enough and close enough that it'll make up for it. But in any case, let's take a look at the first army here. We have the House of Feyenoord, being played by Boromir, who is one of our newer players on the Discord, which is really nice to see. With the advent of the new patch, which if you haven't played it, I recommend you go and check it out, has brought in some new blood, which is great. Great for the health of the community, and it's fun to meet these people and to get to know them. So he is playing the House of Feyenoord. He's got, I believe, 3 full companies of the Mounted Company of Curufin. He's got the Roqueni Mangaloro as well. Very scary bodyguard tier unit. Yeah, they are still bodyguard tier. They don't have their lances anymore, but they do have maces and a particularly high base damage value. So they're different. They're also not 2 HP, but they have basically doubled their unit size. So it kind of balances out. In any case, he's also brought 2 units of the Riders of the Past. These are heavy horse archers. Not too much of a use outside of that, although afterwards they are tanky enough that you can use them to soak up like damage or send them careening into the backs of your enemy's lines, which is always fun. And can actually result in some fairly decent damage, since Silmarillion is more melee defense heavy than armor heavy. His front line is composed of 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Fogun Vamras. He's also got 3 units of the Archers of Amrod and 1 unit of the Otorn Mighty Mill. And around the whole combo off, he's got the Accursed of Alcolonde. This is the legendary company for the House of Feyenoord. They are particularly vulnerable to melee defense, especially for their armor piercing, because they have low melee defense, especially for their price and for their tier. Their melee defense is quite low. I believe it's only about 10. So even lower end macemen or... Oops, someone's driving outside. Even lower end macemen or low tier shock infantry can actually get a ton of value off of these guys and shut them down early. However, they do have really exceptionally good armor. You can upgrade it once to give them about 15 in total, and they are a relentless unit, so they're an absolute blender lord when you get them against the right target. But if they're singled out by some of the units that I outlined, then you can lose value on them very, very quickly. Moving on now, we have the army of the Falathrim being commanded by Wally Wolf. He's got 2 units here of the Scouts of Iglarest. His army is a little bit spread out. He's got 2 Marksmen of Baelor. He's got 2 Arankir Lim. He's also got 2 units of Nobles of Baelor, and he's got some Arankir Lim. So there's a little bit of a... not the Arankir Lim, the Aran Efedun. So there's a little bit of a issue here with his army comp, as the Arankir Lim are technically a bodyguard tier unit. So he should only be able to bring 2 of them and not the Aran Efedun, or he should be able to bring the Aran Efedun and 1 Arankir Lim. It's a little bit of an issue there. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of high tier, so that's looking good. Marines of Rathambar and everything else here is going to be mid tier. So we've got Marines of Eglarest, who are a hunter javelin, particularly good at dealing with armored targets, or single entity monsters. There's not going to be too many of them on the field today because there are no Orcish factions present. In behind them, we've got Spear Host of Rathambar, who now have a projectile. It's not armor piercing, it's just a nice little harassment tool. Marines of Rathambar, however, are harassment javelins, so they do have armor piercing, higher than average range, and really high ammunition pools, but they don't really do a ton of damage up front. And then we've got a couple units here of the Rangers of Rathambar. So other than the little discrepancy here with these 3 bodyguard units, this army is looking good and does conform to the RP rules. Meanwhile, over here we have the city of Gondolin. We've got 2 units of the Knights of the Golden Flower. And the rest of his army is going to be hanging around up here. So we've got 2 Knights of the Golden Flower, 3 Shield Bearers here, and a whole bunch more high tiers. So this army does not conform in the slightest to our RP rules, but oh well. Still a fun game. But he's got 3 units of the Shield Bearers of the Tower, 1, 2, 3 units of the Scouts of the Tree, 2 Spearmen of the Swallow, 2 Armorers of the Hammer, 2 Axemen of the Pillar, and 2 Champions of the Fountain. Absolute Blender Lords. They are very similar to the Accursed of Aquilonde in that they are also a Relentless unit, but these guys will buff morale instead of the fear trait that the Accursed of Aquilonde have, which is nice. And yeah, they're a little bit cheaper, and there's more of them. And they are much higher on their melee defense than the Aquilonde unit, so that's always nice to have. Armors of the Hammer, of course, are Macemen. Very heavily armored Macemen. You can bump their armor, I think, up to 14, which makes them extremely, extremely tanky. And with that AP, they do trade quite nicely against other heavily armored foes. And then the Axemen of the Pillar are here. So let's slow things down a little bit, go and see what the red team is bringing to bear today. First army we have is that of Fingolfin, the Armitar of Barad Ithel. There's 1, 2 of them. This army doesn't quite conform to the 60-30 split, but that's okay, because the Harumatar and the Armitar, you're only supposed to be able to bring 2 of them. You can bring them as a mid-tier pick. That is an amendment to the rules, and I have added that to all the various channels. But you shouldn't be able to bring 3 of them. In addition, we've got 1, 2, 3 Blade Masters of Barad Ithel. We've got Sons of Húrin for their command pick, Marines of Vinyamar, who are mid-tier, Marksmen of Barad Ithel, which constitutes their 4th high-tier pick. I wonder where the rest of their army is going to be hanging out today. They're hiding down here. So we've got 4 high-tier picks. I know they got some cavalry on the field today, maybe 1 or so units of. So that's going to be their 5th high-tier pick. But we'll just call it the rest of the Fingolfin army as we see it. Moving on now to his ally, we have Doriath being played by Captain Gervais. A couple units up here of the Rangers of the Girdle. We've got Marksmen of Region, who are nice with their Silverthorn arrows. Wardens of the Girdle, a whole bunch of light infantry, so 2 units of them there. We've got some Warriors of Region, Axemen of the Girdle, a whole bunch of Shield Bearers, a whole bunch of Axemen, Tiran Leisdanen. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it doesn't look like this really conforms to our army rules either. So I think some people tried, but others might still be a little bit unclear on the rules for it. So we've got some more Wardens of the Girdle here, Marksmen of Region, more Warriors, and I can't quite find their bodyguard pick, but they do have Tiran Leisdanen, they've got catapults, and yeah, don't see any bodyguards around, which is interesting, but maybe they're hiding somewhere, we're just not seeing them, they're mixed in. So we'll take another pass on them once we come to it. Moving on now to the 3rd and final red team army, we have the army of Ascidiand, Scouts of Gelion, Spear Host of Rathloriel, we've got Ents, we've got Mythern and Tolgolen, Kinsmen of Denethor. Already some discrepancies here. These are all 3 bodyguard / uber tier picks, but everything else is pretty well looking good. Spear Host of Gelion, Urfin and Tower on the front lines. There's about 3 or so units of them in total. Some Hunters of Rathloriel, and a whole bunch of Sentries of Gelion who are currently being bullied out of position. So with that being all said and done, let's jump into the game. I turned up here to about 0.7. Sentries of Gelion, a little bit slow on the uptake. Definitely getting bullied out of position here by the Mounted Company of Curufin. It's difficult to know whether or not you should really bring the Sentries of Gelion. I think if you are going to bring them against Feyenoord, then you're going to want to bring them in like hideous numbers. You're going to want to bring like 3, 4, maybe even 5 of them, and then just play that sort of skirmish game. 2 of them I think is a little bit much, because there's limited amounts of what they can do. They're being bullied here by the Mounted Company of Curufin, and then of course there are the Riders of the Pass over here on the field as well, and they are the absolute bane of lightly armored unshielded horse archers, like the Sentries of Gelion. And you have to be super, super quick with your micro here, because once these Mounted Company of Curufin get into range, they're going to start tossing those javelins. These guys are going to drop like flies. Yep, you can already see a few of those going down, and of course if these guys manage to catch them in close quarters, then the Sentries of Gelion will be not long for this world. But it looks like Belegos is maybe baiting them backwards a little bit. I I can see a good amount of dead horsemen from the Feyenoord side over here, and I think that's because he had the hunters who just started hiding in the woods there. So things looking pretty gross for Assyrian right now. They've a little bit of a mistake here. I think leaving the Earfen Tower out on the front lines for too long is not a great idea. Now the Archers of Amrod are going to be able to get some pretty good value from their shots. These are super important units when it comes to the CQB for Assyrian. One of the few units with genuinely scary melee potential. You definitely don't want to leave them out front here, so I would have retreated them back a little bit earlier. Up here in the city, I'm pretty sure things are starting to get ugly. Gondolin has now been engaged here in their front line. We've got Shieldbearers in the tower mixed in with the Axemen of the pillar, and they are colliding with Warriors of Region. We've got some Armatar in there as well, and some Blade Masters of Baron. These two units are very, very quickly being overpowered. Some supporting Bowfire, actually might be Marines of Vinyamar, in fact, letting loose on the scouts of the tree up here, managing to cut down a good 13 of them in fairly short order. Definitely want to put a lot of pressure onto this unit before it can start to fire. If you can put enough missiles into a single unit like this that's sort of isolated, then you can actually mess with their animations and stagger enough of them that they're just not really able to do anything, pinned in place by that much fire. So probably what they want to do here if they can. The Marines, though, nope, still have ammunition, and there's some marksmen being brought to bear. They're around here somewhere. They will eventually start shooting at these guys. But yeah, you definitely want to pay attention to the scouts of the tree. They can be very scary, and I think they're opening fire now on the Marines of Vinyamar. A little bit of revenge there for the early volley and the harassment that they suffered. Over in the back, it looks like Doriath is moving to take position up here on the hill, and they are being blocked by the Elves of the Falas. Got some of the harassment javelins here from the Philothrum side being brought forward, with some bowfire, likely from the Rangers of Rathambar as well, being brought to bear against all of this light infantry, and they're going to have a field day. Oh, those poor spear hosts from Captain Rex. Yeah, really taking it on the chin there from those Marines of Rathambar. They definitely outranged the spear hosts, so they're going to have to be brought a little bit farther forward in order to exact any sort of effective revenge. But I think at this point, maybe they're just sitting there to try and soak it up. Ooh, that's really devastating. Quite a lot of them already dead on the ground there. So let's see what's going on for Assyrian over here on the other end of the field. Looks like the mounted company managed to catch up with those sentries of Gelion, and quite predictably, they were smashed to bits, but it looks like a small number of them will have the opportunity to retreat. The mounted company of Kudafin, some of them are down to about half here, but it's really not a great exchange. Units like the sentries of Gelion can do so much damage if you treat them well. However, they do have some pretty significant counters. Oh, looks like a detachment from the other unit as well managed to escape, but they're about to get caught out for a second time here. I really can't stress it enough. You have to be on point with sentries of Gelion. They are a unit with a ton of ranged longevity, and they have some really strong killing potential. This is a CDN we're talking about here. Sentries and Scouts of Gelion are the units that are going to do a lot of your killing in the game. So letting them get caught out like this is a huge waste of your Midian. Now Boromir is going to be able to retreat there, having suffered very minimal losses in turn, and having further crippled this unit of Sentries of Gelion. Well, it's just went from 19 to 4, so that's a pretty big loss. So the sentry is trying to pursue. Maybe they want to like grab the mounted company, pin them in place, and let the Ents and the Spearmen maybe catch up to them, but they're super overextended right now. And they are managing to maybe exact a bit of a toll here if they continue to fire into the backs of that unit. But yeah, things not looking great for us, City End. See, they've managed to pick apart one of the Archers of Amrod, but there's a lot of dead elves over here on the field as well. A couple of Scouts of Gelion, I think both of them are placed very firmly right here. They do have the high ground, so they'll be able to do a decent amount, but they're actually wasting ammunition here on a single Archer of Amrod. This would be a much better target. Or maybe even, moving forward a little bit and going after the Accursed of Akwalonde, not a bad idea. But let's see what's going on. Looks like there's maybe a minor engagement up here. Marines of Rathambar. Looks like they just took it on the chin from a whole bunch of Axemen and the Spear Host as well. And it's really just a missile fight here. So they're going to pew-pew at each other for a while, jockey for position. It's just light infantry skirmishing with other light infantry. Over here, another devastating loss for Rex's light troops. Axemen on the pillar here, along with some Squid Boys, who are mixing it up with a lot of Doriath light infantry and some Blade Masters of Bened Eitel in support. Down here, the lines haven't really shifted too much. Another unit of shield bearers at the tower have been brought forward, and the armorers of the hammer are being brought in support as well. and they're going to do pretty decently against the Armitar Baron Eiffel. They don't really have a lot of armor piercing, and there's not a whole lot of them in that detachment, so the Armors of the Hammer are basically an immovable object unless the Dodiathrim are able to come to their aid, maybe start to surround this blob if at all possible. In the back here we have some more reserves, Armors of the Hammer, Champions of the Fountain, and some more Spearmen of the Swallow. So things not looking great there. It looks like we have some more action in the back from Feyenoord, probably running off the remnants of that Assyrian cavalry. And it looks like that is the case. Oh no, some Lancers of Anonin Galuth. Some of the cavalry from Stewart of Dale have been found out here, sussed out of their hiding hole in the woods by the Mounted Company of Kudufin. Both of those units there are going to have no problem slaughtering the Lancers in a toe-to-toe engagement. Looks like Stewart's maybe trying to go for cheeky rear charge here, but I would take this little olive branch and retreat with my Lancers of Anonin Galuth and maybe come back with some additional infantry, try and help out my ally, and that's kind of looking like what's going on here. Stewart of Dale sending a large amount of his herdsmen of Hithlum. There's a unit of the Ferdsmen here of Dorloman and some Marines of Vinyamar. And there's going to be a second unit here of the Ferdsmen. They're not going to like having to run around here too much. They don't have the greatest fatigue traits, so when they get tired, they tend to stay tired. The same, however, cannot be said for the Herdsmen of Hithlum, and they're actually not a bad pick for this, as long as you can keep them away from the Horse Archers. Horse Archers will shoot them up all day, every day. But against the Mounted Company normally have no problem just running down archers, but these guys have some hefty two-handed axes, and if they countercharge, they could wipe out, you know, half a unit of Mounted Company in a single go, which would be a great exchange for Stewart of Dale. He's got Herdsmen of Hithlum kind of coming out his ears. I don't think we were able to really see them in the army composition phase, but I think he's got like 4 or 5 units of them just lying in waves, and yep, that's more than enough to bully this Feyenoord cav basically off the field. Over here, Riders of the Pass, just hanging out, trading blows with some of the Osirian skirmishers, but didn't see them during the army comp phase either. The Yondo Hyando and Sarn Athra, these are armor-piercing archers, a nice little pick that give the Green Elves a bit of a leg up against specifically the Sons of Feyenoord is what I had in mind when I added the unit. And yeah, let's see what the result is here. Let's go ahead and kick that into normal speed. They're going to be sitting at about 43. Ooh, some Jabbies coming in tandem with those green fiery arrows, and yeah, those Riders of the Pass, they're going to drop like flies. More javelins being rained down on high from the hunters of Rathloriel, and now they're going to be forced to retreat, but there's really not too many places where they can retreat to. Stewart of Dale, having wisely brought over his troops, is kind of cutting off their retreat, and now these Riders of the Pass they're kind of boxed in. So the Lancers of Anonin Galuth have managed to come back. Looks like they got caught out by the Mounted Company of Kudufin a second time. They've suffered some additional casualties here to the tune of about 11 models. But they're actually going to get a nice little cheeky rear charge here, and if they can just pull out quickly, and the Lancers they'll basically just get free kills on the Lancers and further weaken them. However, if they stick around too long, something like this could happen, where those Herdsmen of Hithlum charge in a little bit anemic, but now the rest of the unit is going to come in a wave, and these Mounted Company are just going to drop. The Lancers are going to double back, and we're going to get that armor-piercing charge bonus off into the Mounted Company, and we're going to see them drop here like flies. Yeah, look at that. Just dying like crazy, already down to shaken. These are some fairly high morale cavalry. They're going to pull out of that, but they're going to have lost a good 10 models there in just a matter of moments. Now some of the Spearmen, the Ferdsmen of Dorloman, are starting to arrive. And a nice double team here into the Riders of the Pass. Some more of those Ondo Hyando still pouring fire into these guys, which honestly is not a good idea. There's a lot of friendly light and medium infantry over here. It's probably not a good idea to continue firing. These units are basically not long for this world anyway. So got to conserve your ammunition a little bit smarter when you're playing as a Syrian. Looks like he's actually, redirected them here to go after the Mounted Company of Kudufin, and they were getting shot from the rear, and that's going to be very ugly for them indeed. Look at that model count drop. That is exactly what the Ondo Hyando are here to do. They're basically your green, or your Asrai Way Watchers, in a lot of ways, from Warhammer. And they do a lot of the same things, focusing on some of these big, hard targets like that. And now most of the Feyenoord Cav, with the exception of... ooh, we got some more Cav coming in. But with the exception of the Requeni Magloro now coming in, didn't see this coming at all. Knights of Gondolin, the Knights of the Golden Flower, beat feet all the way over to this side of the battlefield, and they're about to completely destroy this unit of Scouts of Galeon. Hondo, I don't think I have enough ammunition. There's some Hunters of Rathambar here trying to just thin these guys out as they move in, but they're going to smash hard into the Hondo. Luckily for the Green Elves, they're being propped up by their ally here. Steward of Dale coming in with some Marines of Feyenoord. Hunters of Rathambar are well positioned to either continue firing or to try and envelop them. And then the Herdsmen of Hithlum and the Herdsmen are not too far away. Meanwhile, over here, the main Green Elf line infantry formation has collided with the Footmen of Amarath, and the Footmen of Amarath are probably going to win this. They're super tanky, and the Green Elves are mostly spearmen. And back here you can see some Scouts of Iglarist, well poised to try and charge into the back of these guys. A third unit of Scouts of Gelion is now come out of hiding. Actually, I think this is a unit. This is the second unit, and they're just out of ammunition. And the rest of the Green Elves have moved up here and have now collided with the Philothrum, and they are smashing their way through here, surprisingly enough. Kinsmen of Denethor are being brought in as well, fairly wisely, I think, being put into the center. Now, they're not going to be able to attack anything from the front, but if some of that cavalry wants to come from the rear and get that cheeky charge, it'd be easy enough to turn those Kinsmen of Denethor around and smash into them. Although, this is interesting. So, taking the Footmen of Amarath like this and sandwiching an enemy force in between some of your own infantry, super smart idea. Most of the time. Now, there's a ton of cavalry hanging around here. Got some Scouts of Iglarist, 2 units of, I think, the Knights of the Golden Flower are still here, Roqueni Magloro, etc., etc. Huge amount of friendly cavalry. They cannot charge through friendly infantry. So they're basically denying their allies the ability to just cycle charge down this big blob of extremely high tier and very dangerous Green Elf infantry who are being supported by some Ents over here, and they're just kicking to death a lot of these Ironic limbs. So it is, on its face, a seemingly good idea, but in these particular circumstances, probably not the best thing. Now, Scouts of Iglarist being brought in here, they're basically a mobile infantry reserve. You can use them this way, and the Green Elves aren't too happy about it, but I think the Ents are going to be the deciding factor here. They're going to be able to just kick their way through the Ironic limb like so many bowling pins, and there's not really anything that the Philothrum have over here that directly counters them. The things that can do decent enough against them are the Scouts of Iglarist, but be an easy enough thing for Lord Belagos to just force move his Ents through these infantry units, and then the cavalry just can't get at them. So, yeah, interesting little situation over here. The Green Elf infantry down in the Vale is very hard pressed. However, Roqueni Magloro taking it on the chin from what I assume is going to be the Marines of Feyenoord, and of course it is. Lancers of Honoring Galuth being brought over, but unfortunately being caught out by the Roqueni Magloro. But it's not the worst, as now the Roqueni Magloro do have their backs turned to those harassment javelins, which is only going to play in their favor. Boom! A whole bunch of those Roqueni Magloro are going to fall there, and there's really only 26 of them remaining, and each one of these models is extremely valuable. So losing them like that, not the greatest. There's a little bit of Feyenoord calves still hanging out here. Surprising amount of mounted company, more than I thought, but there are spears nearby that can bully them. And there's the Herdsmen of Hithlum as well, and yet another unit of spears. So a whole bunch of reinforcements coming over this way. Marines of Feyenoord doing great right now. They're just this little bastion of like Overwatch fire, and they're just preying upon the Feyenoordian cavalry. Oh, somebody's general just went down. I presume that is the Green Elf general. They have lost half their men. Scouts of Gelion now being scattered. And I would be very surprised if we didn't see this whole block break here. But surprisingly enough, they're actually doing okay. And they're just holding all these units in place. They're definitely not going to win this fight. They have no chance at all. But surprisingly enough, out here, they're doing a lot of damage. The Mythrin and Togolin and company don't really like this, but the Urfin and Tower are Loch Morel, and so are the Ents. The Ents are just doing work here. Like, look at what they have managed to accomplish all by themselves, and I think there's even a little bit of Doriath support on its way over. Marksman of Region pew-pewing into that blob, doing what they can. And now let's move on to other parts of the field. We spent enough time over here. Over in this little choke point, it's just kind of been a fight to the finish, right? Just an absolute stalemate here. Sons of Hurin, Blade Masters, and what remains of the Armatar clashing with a very formidable battle line here. Armors, the Hammer, and the Shield Bearers, and so forth. I think there's a second unit of Shield Bearers that's actually been brought in here. But a lot of these units are just slowly being ground down. A lot of them at half health. Marines of Feyenoord are doing their thing. I think the Scouts have probably joined the fray at some point, but I bet many of them are now currently dead. And another unit of Spearmen of the Swallow has basically been reduced to nothingness here by the tenacious Red Team Assault. Marksman Baradithel now out of ammunition being thrown in there to add to the body count. But this is looking a little bit like it's in favor of the blue team, but we'll see how that ends up turning out ultimately. Meanwhile, over here, yep, things more or less the same, but actually the Philothrum are starting to break here. Just the tenacity of these Green Elf forces, and of course the addition of the Ents there is really taking a number here on some of the best that the Philothrum have to offer. Both of the Iron Lim are over here, and both of them are being kicked to death in equal measure. Up here, Doriath fighting hard against the rest of the Philothrum high-tier units, but the Nobles of Baelor, I think, are going to be able to hold the line here against a lot of this light infantry. Minimal support here from the high-tier Region units being added in, and there's actually some Marksmen of Baelor who are just raining down death and destruction into the rear of these Doriath forces, and there's not a whole lot that they can really do about it. There's really no moves here for Captain Gervais, unless he wants to try and fire indirectly up here into high-end, very heavy archers, and he probably doesn't want to do that. That being said, still some Harumatar, and they are a surprising Blender Lord unit, especially when upgraded. Meanwhile, Warriors of Region being brought over here. The Catapult is still kicking too, and Leisdanen about to take a big old bite here out of some of these champions of the fountain. Now, Doriath is currently winning their way through here. The Blade Masters of Baradithel really not having a great time, but that is going to be ridiculously destructive. There are quite a lot of units in here that rely very heavily on their armor, and those Tyrian Leisdanen projectiles are a direct rebuttal to that particular trait. And they're just going to Blender Lord their way here from range through these units, and a lot of these units are getting tossed around, and sometimes they get back up, but I don't think most of these units are, especially not the Guardians of the Fountain or the Champions of the Fountain, because they just don't have the staying power that the Hammer of Wrath do. Another big volley there winding up, and just look at what they've managed to do and how this line of Gondolin troops has been slowly receding. Yeah, Axeman of the Pillar, everyone getting caught up in that. And Tyrian Leisdanen, I think, still have another volley. Yes, indeed. And they've just smashed their ways through probably, I would guess, 60 or 70 Gondolin troops there, and that's really starting to turn things around. Warriors of Region are in here as well, and they're well poised for a nice cheeky charge. Another volley being thrown by those Tyrian Leisdanen. I really don't get tired of watching them just toss people around with those incredibly dangerous throwing axes. Now, Waffle sees it. He's going to try and push through and deny the Warriors of Region the charge. Probably should have taken that opportunity while Rex still had time. But the Tyrian Leisdanen, they're doing great work, so why do you want to mess that up? And even if the Warriors of Region get denied their charge, he does, of course, still have the Legendary Company here to continue to pew-pew with. Now, let's go and see how things are going for the Green Elves, because I have a feeling that it's not super well. Now, surprisingly, with the death of their general, and the fact that their lines are being slowly surrounded and shattered, right? Yeah, and just generally kind of been losing this fight the whole time, the Green Elves have held on remarkably well. In the back here, you can see some of the Herdsmen of Hithlum reinforcements, which sort of brought forward and thrown to the Accursed of Alkalandi, which isn't the worst plan, but the Accursed of Alkalandi do not stand. There's a whole bunch of archers that I'm brought in here to the tune of 2 units. And while I don't doubt that the Herdsmen of Hithlum will get decent value off the charge, they will lose that fight very, very rapidly when unsupported like this. Meanwhile, over here, Marines of Vinyamar look like they just used the last of their ammunition. I believe they're firing into the rear end flank of the Otor and Mighty Mo. Meanwhile, on the flank here, Herdsmen of Hithlum chopping their way through some of the Footmen of Amaras. But these Herdsmen here are on the verge of just collapse, really. A lot of them are tired, and the Edine units, when not chevroned or when not supported, do have a tendency to run away. They generally fall at about between 12 and 16 morale, which, 16 morale on the Herdsmen is not bad. When you're tired, you are going to be taking fatigue penalties, so I don't know these guys will be able to hold out for too much longer, but all they really got to do is just deal a whole bunch of damage. I mean, up here, the Green Elves are now starting to fall apart. Even the Kinsmen of Denethor are like, nope, I'm gonna go become a baker or a gardener or something. Anything is better than this. And they're thinking about running away. Baron Kirlim slowly regaining the advantage, and now Arain Ethadun, along with friends here, help from on high. The Marksmen of Baelor, who were on Overwatch earlier, have been brought down to reinforce the line. Doriath coming in with some of the Wardens of the Gargoyle. It looks like the Green Elves and friends are going to be making another concerted push here, but I don't know if they have the moxie to really get through here. Hyando in close quarters. They're not bad. I just don't think there's enough. And I think that they'll eventually get swarmed and overpowered here. But still, they're holding out. And surprisingly enough, the percentages are very, very even. 5% difference in favor of the blue team. Up here, Doriath has fairly predictably begun to fall apart here, but they have taken a toll on a lot of this light infantry. Nobles of Balar and some of the heavier units, though, have come out of this very, very well. Now they're being moved downhill to rapidly reinforce here. So it looks like Lord of Belegos is going to take his ends, force run them through here, and maybe try to save them if at all he can. Or maybe go for a nice little rear charge here. Wally Wolf, meanwhile, trying to make sure that that doesn't happen, I presume, by tying them down with his Arayn Efedun. But I don't know how successful he's going to be. The Ents can basically move around at will. So Doriath Marksman now being brought over here, and I think they were shooting down into the valley at some of the Accursed of Aquilon earlier, trying to chip away at their numbers. But now the Mythern, even the mighty Mythern in Tolgalen, are now fleeing. What's left of the Kinsmen of Denethor, and I think maybe some of the Earth from the Tower, are making a last stand, and it's probably better to actually get out of here with these Wardens, get out of here with the Marksmen, maybe leave the Wardens of the Girdle behind to kind of slow the enemy, but definitely want to save the high-tier Marksmen, if at all possible. That would be a really nice thing to have in addition to the Ents moving into that late game. Up here, it looks relatively even. It's kind of hard to say. I think that the Warriors aren't going to win this fight, but I know still some Marksmen up here, still some Catapults. Of course, there are still Harumatar, and I'm pretty sure the Tyr and Lysdanen are hanging out up here. And unfortunately, they're about to get caught by the last thing that they want to get caught by. Especially not while they have ammunition that can still be of use at range. So Tyr and Lysdanen getting picked on now. Poked to death by the Nobles of Balar, and there's a little bit of supporting fire coming in from a basically full unit of Rangers of Rathambar. So this is not where the Tyr and Lysdanen want to be. They want to run out of here, but the second they do, they're going to be turning their back to those archers. So this is a pretty ugly situation. So we'll see what Rex does here. I think he probably wants to hold on to the Tyr and Lysdanen, so we're going to see them run away in fairly short order. And yeah, let's see. Let's go witness the end for the Green Elves. As the last of their forces now are being scattered, Wardens of the Girdle definitely want to run away. Marksmen of Region engaged in combat here with the Arankir-Lim. And honestly, given the numbers disparity here and the fatigue disparity, I think this is a fight that the Marksmen could probably win. These guys have been fighting forever, but yeah, they're kind of surrounded on all sides. So now Feyenoord victorious down in the Dell. Quenny Maglor basically been reduced down to nothing, but they're going to get a full-on charge into the rear of the Marksmen of Region, who didn't even see it coming, didn't have time to turn around. It's actually going to be pretty painful. Otor and Mightymo charging their way uphill. And some remnants of the rest of the Feyenoordian host are still here, mostly footmen. Ooh, they're going to get hit in the rear here by some armor-piercing infantry and the remnants of the Marines of Vinyamor. So Stewie and his House Fingolfin forces really giving it to their hated rivals here, and they're not going to go quietly into that good night. They're going to try and ambush that unit of footmen of Amras. They'll probably do a decent amount of damage to it too, I would expect. And back here, the scattered remnants of the Ferdsmen and Spear Host. They put up a mighty struggle. This was ugly, and this was never in their favor, but I'm surprised by how well they did ultimately. There's a lot of dead units down here too. Archers of Amrod. So Feyenoord seems to be the healthiest of the remaining forces here. These Ferdsmen I probably would take elsewhere. The fear on the Accursed of Alcolonde is going to be a very, very bad thing indeed for a lot of these units. And now they're actually going to get charged down here, pinned in place and attacked on two sides. I think those Ferdsmen are basically going to break instantaneously. I would be shocked if they did not. Quenny Magloro actually getting skewered there by those Ferdsmen. A couple of those models that were still remaining, being brought low by these lowly militia spears. But with the Feyenoordian infantry charging in there, these Ferdsmen are probably not long for this world. And the Marines and the remnants of the herdsmen have both been scattered here, and they're going to do about 14, maybe, casualties to the unit of footmen of Amras. Marksman getting sandwiched here by the Otorn Mighty Bow and the Arankir Limb. Again, this I think was throwing good money after bad. These are troops that the red team is going to sorely need. Same with the Wardens of the Girdle here. There's a lot of opportunity to retreat these units, so I think that should have been taken advantage of. But that being said, Lord of Belagos managed to save his Ents. That's always a nice thing to have in your pocket moving into this late game. Still got a catapult here, and if he can get that into place, he could really take advantage of some of the troops that are blobbed up over here. That could actually be something that works to the advantage of a Doriath player. Marksman of Region, we're going pew-pew into the remnants of these Gondolin troops, and I really can't declare anyone a victor, like a clear victor in this, because both sides just lost a hideous amount of numbers for this tiny little stretch of land. And Spearman of the Swallow smashing into the Marksman of Region, trying to make sure that they can't fire, but honestly, they're going to get butchered in close quarters with these guys. Not only are they lower end spearmen, but there is a fatigue difference here, and you can already see the marksmen beginning to hack their way through that light infantry. And I think this is going to go to the red team here on this side. Got some scouts of the tree, and they're trying to hit something. I think that they're shooting at these tiny little spits of units here, but probably not worth it. Probably want to save that ammunition for a little bit later. Over here, marksmen coming to the aid of their allies, so that could really swing things, and a huge host. Actually, that's not Velothram at all. There's a whole bunch of Fingolfin units still kicking. Some herdsmen of Ithlam still on the field somehow. More Marines of Vinyamar, a full unit of Blade Masters, and about half a unit here, some very tired Sons of Húrin, which looks to be about everything that remains of House Fingolfin, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 units who are just kicking around. The Ents are going to be coming up there as well, so if these marksmen end up getting caught here, that would be very bad for Wally Wolf. They could get surrounded very easily, the Ents can be brought in to support these units, and then that would be 133 Marksmen of Balar off the field, so we'll see what ends up happening there. Marksmen of Region here, having only lost a single model since we last checked in on them, have reduced these Spearmen of the Swallow down to 27 in very rapid order. Oh no, there's still a little bit left here from House Fingolfin, some Harumatar as well. They'll be able to move in, surround these units, and this is going to be a nice big ol' win. So got some Rangers of the Girdle here, some of the supporting units. Tyrion Lysdon, and looked like they were trying to load for a shot here on the Nobles of Balar, but Wally Wolf very wisely screened that unit with some Rangers of Rathambar. Doesn't care if he loses them, all he's got to do is stop this Tyrion Lysdon from tossing their payload. A few shots there coming in from the Rangers of the Girdle. I'm not going to do too much, that's mostly going to bounce off the heavy armor of those spearmen. Rangers of Rathambar moving in as well, and once they get there, the Doriath troops are really going to need to flee. There might have been a small chance, a small window of opportunity to quickly destroy the Nobles of Balar, but I don't think they would have been able to do it in time. I definitely do not believe that. That being said, there are some merits to trying to set up in between these catapults here, right? Because that's just going to create these tiny little choke points that if you set yourself up in here, then you might be able to funnel your enemies through here. We've seen it work in previous battles, where it turns what is a hopelessly losing fight into a winning one, or at least into a very costly holding action. But it seems that Rex is going to instead opt to save what he can, which is probably a good idea, and then reunite with the rest of his forces and those of his allies. Up here, it looks like the marksmen, they got caught. Ents are here, herdsmen are here. Yep. I don't think that they are too long for this world, but let's see what's going on over here. Nope, that's all the same stuff for now. Let's go ahead and kick it into full speed then. And those herdsmen and Ents are going to just smash into these marksmen. Oh man, look at that. The casualties are going to start to jump here, and we could see a morale shock that could send this unit running for the hills. I would not be surprised by that in the slightest. The Ents can really get in there and surround them. Now the Sons of Húrin with that fear in here as well, 2 times fear units. These Sons of Húrin turn around now and attack the marksmen. We could see them all break immediately. Oop. We're surround here. The casualties are racking up, and yep, that unit of marksmen of Balar gone. Completely butchered here with this relentless and just furious assault. Charged right uphill. Wally Wolf didn't even see it coming, and boom, down go the marksmen. It looks like there's still some scouts at the tree up here as well, but another isolated unit. So if the red team keeps up this momentum and manages to just keep picking off these full units piecemeal, that's going to be a pretty big deal. Now, they are down by about 11%, but we are definitely going to see that start to close very, very soon here. The red team have a shot for sure, and they're definitely going to shoot it. And I think they're going to do pretty well, especially if they set themselves up there on that hill. The blue team, a little bit slow, perhaps, to react and to unite. Maybe feeling a little bit confident here. But they do have some pretty formidable numbers at their disposal. They've got Otor and My Team over, still very healthy. Ryan Efadun as well. Some more marksmen of Balar. And I know that we have some Accursed of Aqualande who are going to be chilling in here as well, in addition to some very nicely armored chaff. The Philothrim still have their Nobles of Balar. 2 units of. They're taking a little bit of damage in the meantime, but still very healthy. A lot of chaff, a lot of armor, and some decent elites as well. So the red team definitely have their work cut out for them. Let's see what happens here. We're going to go ahead, put things into fast forward as both sides begin to maneuver for that final confrontation. Turn lights down and still kicking. Catapults. There's still some marksmen in there. Some Rangers of the Girdle. The Rangers will be really nice to use against some of these more lightly armored troops. They could force a mass rout against the Philothrim, if they're lucky, depending on how the Philothrim choose to engage. That would be really nice. What do we got over here? Oh, yeah. Aron Kirlim, Marksman of Balar, Marines of Rathambar, and just so much chaff. Now, red team definitely outnumbered, but they do have the positional advantage. There are some still, like, pretty decent units left in here. Let's go ahead and turn things down to 1. Bladesman, Baradithel, full Bladesman. Herdsman opening up, Marksman of Region, really letting some of these units have it. Although I don't think I'd go after the Arain Efadun. Probably not the best, although, you know, maybe weakening the elites is the way to go here. I would instead be going after Nobles of Balar or other things like that. Mostly that's what Steward of Dale is opting to focus his herdsman attention on, and it is showing him a little bit of success. They are still heavily armored spirit, even if they are unshielded. But nonetheless, as we can see, not invulnerable to arrow fire, especially not from close range shots. And they're just pew-pewing away. Those Orion Efadun who have now turned their shields towards them. I think that that's a waste of marksman ammunition. I would definitely be going after some of these units here, like the Nobles of Pilar. They're going to be the more significant troops in that grind, because there's no answer to them on the side of the red team so far. And like small fronts and like choke pointy grinds is where polearm units tend to excel for the most part. A lot of light units going in there. Final volleys being shot, being whatever is left, just throw everything you have at them. You know, pointy sticks, shoot all your arrows, try and use all the ammunition that you possibly can. Those Rangers are actually going to catch these guys sleeping. There's still a decent amount of ends. There's still 4 of them. We've seen what they can do to units when there's no sort of natural predators nearby. And this is not a bad way to use them, coming in from the rear against those Rangers of Rathambar, pursuing, you know, far farther than they should. I think we could see them start to mass rout here, unless the Aron Kirlim, of course, are brought forward, and now they're probably going to stabilize. No, maybe not. Yep, there they go. Once those casualties start to mount very, very quickly, yeah, look at that. A furious countercharge here from the red team up on that hill. Really hitting them hard. Blade Master's being brought to bear, but this is where it's significant. Now, maybe leaving the ensign here to kind of pick on these guys as they move forward isn't the worst idea. Yeah, those Rangers definitely broke there. I wonder if the Aron Kirlim started running as well. They did, oh my goodness. Furious countercharge, and some of these marksmen up here as well are probably overextended. So that's actually going to bring the percentages very close to one another. About a 6% difference now. But yeah, you definitely want to get those ends out of there. You don't want to leave them in close quarters with these Nobles of Balar. That's just not going to go well, because they have some massive bonuses against elements. So what they want to do here is just try and move in, swarm the Nobles of Balar, maybe try to, if possible, not let them form those like big ugly blobs that can be so hard to deal with when you don't have things like javelins. If they can isolate certain parts of them, like maybe moving the Yeah, see, I would have kept my ants back a little bit and then tried to come in from the side if at all possible and just skirt around the Nobles of Baelor and not let my ants get anywhere near them. Now, they are kicking a lot of them to death. It is so far effective, but I wouldn't expect them to be able to see them push forward. We're not going to have fun with this. Down go one of the ants. Three of them left. One is going to try to retreat, but this guy is just pushed so far. Down goes another one. I don't think this guy's going to be able to escape from that. Yep, down goes as well. So very costly mistake there. I would have tried to push in and around them, and maybe kick to death a lot of these units down here. That's probably the better way of doing it. The ants would, I very likely still die and still end up touching those spears, but at least you tried, right? Hurts me to hit them, putting in some fire into the rear, but so much of this is Feyenoord infantry, and they just don't care about arrows. Very heavily armored. Yeah, that's basically the long and short of it. They've got the armor value to just not care that the herdsmen hit them exist until they engage them in close quarters. Now they've got that positional advantage. Still some Marines with Rathambar down there. Spear host. There's some more footmen of Amras being brought forward. Really what it'll take is morale to beat this. If the red team are going to pull out anything here, it's going to be a morale thing. If they're going to take down the Feyenoord general or something, and that'll be how they win this. And if things start routing, I don't think the Philothra are really all that interested in sticking around. They don't really have a whole lot left here. They've got the nobles, but the nobles are starting to get a little bit low. Yeah, this is really going to come down to morale. If the red team can start to break the morale of these troops, then that's going to be significant. So Steward of Dale very wisely pulling out. You don't see people do this very often, but honestly, it's not a bad idea at all when you have something to allow your units to disengage. Cycling your shock infantry. Another big charge there. This time from Blade Masters within support. They're really giving it to the Accursed. Saw a lot of red cloaks go down in very rapid succession there. But I think we're going to go ahead and turn this up. It's just kind of devolving into a bit of a grind fight.
And are becoming tired.
Now the Accursed are going toe-to-toe with some heavy axemen, or rather some two-handed axemen. Not necessarily heavy, they are a medium troop, but the damage they deal is quite significant, and the Blade Masters mixed in there as well. And yeah, just watching them die. See, this is what... Imagine if there was more Ents over here. Imagine if there was like 4 more Ents here, kicking all these guys to death. That'd be pretty significant. They'd be able to avoid a lot of these polearms really easily. So I think throwing them in early threw away the last best hope, maybe, that the red team had to really pull this out. They probably would have ended up losing it anyway, I would think. The numbers and like the armor and the lack of armor piercing on the remaining groups that they have is pretty significant. Especially when it comes to a big grindy fight like this, the armored troops are usually going to be 9 times out of 10, assuming their morale can hold and things like that. But percentages, very close. 5% difference, 92 to 97. That's nothing to be ashamed of at all. Yep, the Ents just went down, slain by the Ryan Efadun and the Accursed of Aqualonde, who are now down to 14. I think what we're going to start to see here is just like a last stand, basically, by the Masters doing their best. Rex can see that that part of the line is broken. He's going to charge in here with his catapult crew and actually catch out some of the Marines with Rathambar, kill them very quickly. The catapult crew have the same stats as the Axe Guard, so they're really good at blending chaff infantry, and that's exactly what the Marines of Rathambar are when it comes to CQB. And with them being dispatched, what that's going to do is open up an opportunity here for Rex to be able to charge into the rear. If some of these Accursed to Aqualon, we might see them just get swept from the field here. Kierdan himself, you can see him right here with his grayish hair. He's going to get caught up in that as well. Killing the Philothran General? Maybe? I mean, I don't think they have the numbers really left to do this. Down goes another one of the Accursed. Payment for the destruction of the Teleri at Aqualonde. Thingol really never forgave the Noldor for it. So this is a confrontation that is really not all that far out of the story. The Accursed managing to pull it back here. They dropped shaken momentarily. Fingolfin troops mostly holding on through the grit of the Harumatar and the remaining Armatar. We're just going to be keeping everyone in place. But damn, those polearms, despite being at a choke point, they really took some hard hits. One of them is down to 45, the other one is down to 10. But I think fairly predictably, it's going to come down to the House of Feyenoord. Otor and my team all managing to slip through the lines. And now, the Knights of Mairos confronting Thingol, Lord of the Wood, directly. I don't think the Dordiath General is too long for this one. Oh, there goes Círdan. Círdan just died right beside Thingol. It's a little bit too late for that, though. If this had happened earlier, then maybe the Philothron could have been routed off, but the blue team is in the ascendancy, and there's really no way for the necessary morale penalties to be able to stack on top of each other to precipitate that rout. Thingol surrounded basically on all sides. Look at him, like stutter stepping and like unable to be staggered. Interesting. Trying to kill like one lone Philothron soldier, but now the rest of his troops have been slain around him, and it's really just the Lord of the Wood who's standing alone here, just trying desperately to defend himself, but also slay his hated enemies. And now the Feyenoordians are just boxing him back and forth. I don't think he's too much longer for this one. We'll probably see him fall in just a few moments here. He's just getting bullied, pushed even farther into the arms of his enemies, and down goes Thingol, having his head lopped off by one of the Kinslayers. And it really just leaves Fingolfin now, doesn't it? Stewie's troops making a valiant last stand here. 99 to 94, 5% difference. But there's just too many of the Fëanorians left. The Elves of Cityscape were not able to deal a death blow to the Fëanorian army, which would have potentially swung things, but of course that would have left more Philothron to be killed. And maybe that would have been better. Maybe it would have been better to try and take down the heavily armored troops, and then it would have been down to the light and medium Philothron to try and grind it out in this fight. So that might have changed things, but you know, as they say, hindsight is 20/20. Look at this guy over here, just about to get bullied by 3 marksmen. Very, very lucky if he doesn't die here. Oh. Those marksmen are actually going to rout. He's going to kill one of them. That is a very lucky spear host indeed. One of the only survivors of his unit, so this poor shell-shocked lad here is going to be able to go home with the much reduced host of the Philothron, but without their lord. So really, can anyone be said to have won this fight? 94 to 99. Still the House of Fingolfin holds on. And these elite chamber guardians of the High King himself are finally going to break and flee. That's game over here. Damn close game. 94 to 100. I hope we see, well, A, I hope we see more RP battles like this, but B, I hope those armies conform a little bit more closely to the guidelines set out for them. Nonetheless, really fun game to watch. Everyone did really well. I think Assyrian kind of struggled the most, but they did manage to make some pretty strong plays, especially against the Philothron. But I think ultimately, House of Feyenoord probably should have been the object of their attentions, and he did need to be a little bit more careful with his Ents at the end there, and with the Horse Archers early on. I would have actually maybe brought something else. I would have probably brought the Outriders of Dwelin, maybe, or just like really went hard on my cavalry and played that kind of fluid game. Maybe try to frustrate the Fëanorians, but who knows how that could have turned out. That could have just like led more of their infantry inside the city, and then, you know, they would have lost in the choke points without that support. Who knows? But in any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys enjoy the content on the channel, I do have a Patreon down in the description. So if that's something you're interested in, I do have a lot of like different benefits and stuff, mostly centered around the giveaways and things like that. So yeah, that's an option if you guys want to. If not, totally cool. I get it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye! Oh yeah, and it would be very foolish of me not to plug the community RP while we're doing this sort of RP-esque or RP format of battles. So if you guys want to play in the community RP that is being put on by the staff on the Silmarillion Total War Discord, then jump into our Discord down in the description. Let us know who you want to play for, and we'll figure it out. I think a lot of factions are starting to fill up now. I know that my faction, Assyrian, now has a full complement of generals, so myself and 4 others. But I think there are still a few factions that are open, so yeah. Come visit us, come say hi, and I'll see you next time. Oh right, and because someone always skewers me for carelessly forgetting this, there's the after battle casualties statistics. Pause it, browse at your leisure. Bye-bye now.